The night had gone hollow hours ago. I drove northbound along Interstate 5, the cruiser's light bar washing the empty highway in red and blue that no one else saw. Dispatch had logged me on a simple call. Disabled vehicle, mile marker 327. Routine. The kind of call that meant paperwork more than danger. I repeated the phrase under my breath. Routine stop, Unit 12. But the farther I pushed, the more the asphalt seemed to stretch. The hum beneath my tires grew louder, steadier, almost like an engine not mine. I lowered the radio, thumb tapping the mic. Unit 12 to Central, en route. The reply came fractured, clipped with static, like someone whispering behind the curtain of the transmission. No words, just breath threaded with my own. The green highway signs passed one by one, then again. The same exit number flashing overhead twice. I rubbed my eyes, told myself I was tired. Told myself highways repeated sometimes. Construction, detours, tricks of the mind. But the odometer disagreed. Miles kept climbing, yet the world refused to change. It leaked faint through the glass, louder than it should be with windows rolled tight. At last, flashers appeared ahead, hazard lights stuttering against a guardrail. A sedan tilted nose first, rear wheels lifted at an impossible angle, as if the blacktop had shifted beneath it. I pulled to the shoulder. Boots crunching on rock, breath fogging under halogen glare. The car's engine ticked, cooling. My flashlight beam swept across the cabin, cutting through smears of condensation on glass. Empty seats, but the dashboard was alive. Gauges flicked like nervous eyes. And then the windshield fog thickened, palmed from within as though unseen hands pressed outward. Prints bloomed. 5 fingers splayed, sliding against the glass, then vanished. A hollow tap followed, though nothing remained. My pulse skipped, jaw locking against the old mantra. Routine, routine, routine. I lifted the radio again. Unit 12, on scene. The reply startled me into stillness. It was my voice. Not repeating, not echoing, but leading. It said the words I hadn't yet spoken. A delayed future pressed into my ear before I could breathe them. I clutched the mic harder, waiting. But the line only hissed and sighed like lungs filled with sand. The cruiser's hazard lights ticked. Tick, tick, tick. I stared at their reflection bleeding across the blacktop. Too bright, too synchronized with my heart. I forced myself closer to the sedan. The trunk seam glowed faint with condensation. Cold where the night was warm. A smell of overheated rubber clung heavy, layered with something metallic. Ozone, sharp and electric as though lightning had struck asphalt and left it humming. I swept the beam lower along the guardrail. Scratches lined the steel, fresh, but none matched the car's frame. They ran deeper, longer, as though dragged by something wider than tires. A crunch behind me. I spun, flashlight spilling white across asphalt. Nothing. Only the long corridor of road breathing into mist. The sound came again. Crunch, pause, crunch. Half a pace behind me, though no shadow matched. Not real. Real. Not real. I didn't know if I said it aloud or if the night said it for me. My light caught the cruiser's mirror. A reflection moved that wasn't mine, tilting its head slower than I did. I staggered back. Central, confirm Unit 12 requesting secondary. The channel spat once, then returned only silence layered on silence. The sedan blinked its hazards again. Tick, 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 each flash brighter, as though pulling the dark closer instead of pushing it back. I stepped forward once, twice. My boot caught warmth on the gravel. I froze. Gravel isn't supposed to hold heat. I crouched, pressed my palm down. The stones quivered faintly as if they were still remembering the weight of another cruiser idling seconds ago. I backed toward my own car. The radio hissed once, then split clear, my own voice whispering through, "Don't look inside again." I hadn't spoken yet. I couldn't have. My hand froze halfway to the mic. Breath rattled in my throat. The windshield of the stranded sedan bloomed with palms again, faster, harder, like desperate passengers trying to claw out. Hollow, frantic, then gone. I steadied my light, refusing to angle it toward the windows. If I didn't see, it wasn't real. That's what Academy taught. Observe only what's there, never invent. But this was the opposite. It invented itself before I could observe. My voice cracked as I repeated the log for no one. "Unit 12, vehicle unoccupied." The reply came first. "Unit 12, vehicle unoccupied." Then silence again. The night folded. It didn't end, didn't break. It folded. I felt the highway pull beneath me like paper creasing. Every exit light bent with it, green signs leaning into themselves, letters doubled. My cruiser engine rumbled steady, but the road it traveled refused to straighten. I realized, too late, the patrol wasn't moving me forward. It was rehearsing me, filing me, already written. The hazard lights died without dimming. They just stopped, like a heartbeat interrupted mid-beat. The darkness didn't flood back in so much as arrive politely, leaving enough glow from the cruiser's bar to paint the guardrail in tired red and blue. I holstered the flashlight for a second, palms on my belt, forcing my stance to look like training photos. You hold the shape long enough, maybe the night believes it. A breeze slipped down the lanes and went quiet halfway across the shoulder, as if the air had reached a line it refused to cross. I looked up to catch my bearings and found the same green sign I'd passed 10 minutes ago. Exit 41, Copper Ridge. My mouth dried. I turned 360 degrees and found another just like it behind me. Same height, same dents, same constellation of bug impacts. Central, confirm. Did DOT duplicate signage on 41? I waited. The reply took its time, then arrived split across 2 moments. My voice first, then dispatch overlapping itself so the words marched out of sync. Negative on duplication, duplication, duplication. I shut my eyes a second too long and saw the afterimage of hazard lights pulsing under my lids. I walked the shoulder to the mile marker, aiming my beam low. The post read 327, embossed numbers bright with reflective paint. I reached out, dragged a gloved finger across the digits. Wet, not water, a thin film of something colder, like the chill left behind when a freezer door opens. I wiped it on my pants and told myself the temperature drop was psychological. I told myself a lot of things. A pair of cat's eyes glinted in the median, too high for an animal. I raised the light and found the metal reflectors of another marker. Same number, same gouge along the side where a mower had clipped it. 2 identical posts shared the same patch of earth the way 2 identical thoughts share the same second. I swallowed, tongue tasting copper. The sedan's interior light flicked on by itself. No door, no motion. 1 dull tap from the windshield, then nothing. I took a step and stopped because the gravel under my heel was warm again. I crouched and pressed, and the heat pulsed twice the way an idling engine throbs through a floorboard. I could feel the rhythm through my palm, a pattern not mine, not the sedan's. The highway itself was breathing. I backed toward the cruiser, angling my body so the dashcam could see my hands and the scene together, like I was keeping an audience calm. The little red record light glowed steady. I toggled playback out of reflex just to make sure the feed was live. The screen showed a frame from 30 seconds in the future. Me turning my head to the left, jaw set, the exact expression I hadn't made yet. I froze. I freeze. The screen version of me didn't. He turned, then lifted the mic, then said, "It's looping," and I watched my own mouth form the words. "Central," I said to the version of the road that was happening now. "Be advised I have—" My voice on the other end cut ahead of me again, already finishing. "Duplicate signage and time discrepancy." We overlapped like bad dubbing. I let go of the mic and the radio breathed in my ear for me. Across the lanes, fog rose where there was no water to make it. It climbed in strips, like ribbon peeled from asphalt, and drifted across to the shoulder in a disciplined line that made no sense. I stepped away from it without meaning to, and my boot landed in my own tread print. The heel matched. The little chip in the sole matched. I traced the track back and found another just like it, and another, arcing in a slow, reluctant circle that brought me right back to the cruiser's rear bumper. Reset. The word bled from my teeth, or the radio or the sky, I couldn't tell which. I opened the driver door and sat behind the wheel, telling myself it was to review procedure and not because the seat felt like a small piece of the world that still recognized me. The engine purred. I watched the clock blink from 2:41 to 2:41 to 2:41, the colon flashing its insistent metronome. Headlights materialized in the mirror, a big rectangular glare that said semi-truck coming fast. Relief snapped across my shoulders. I flicked the light bar to steady, set my hand out the window motioning the driver to move left. The horn blasted once, a long, compassionate moan of a working night meeting another. I waited for the Doppler drop as it passed. It didn't drop. The note stretched, hung, and then began to come from everywhere at once, as if the horn had looped itself around the scene. The trailer never crossed into my lane. The sound stayed, and the truck didn't. I put the cruiser in drive and eased forward until the horn diminished to a pressure at the base of my skull. I parked again. The horn swelled back. I parked facing south, then north, then angled. No change. I rolled the window up. The horn faded to a hum. I rolled it down. The horn returned as a harmony to the engine. A bedtime song for machines. "Unit 12, you still on scene?" The voice came clean this time, bright, bored, like any other night. I almost wept. "Affirm, Central. Disabled vehicle present but unoccupied. I'm observing anomalies. A paper word. Safe. I wasn't going to say corridor or loop or future. I wasn't going to give the night vocabulary it could use on me. If unoccupied, proceed to clear." The sentence landed with a weight I didn't like. Proceed to clear. I repeated, because repeating is how you make things true. I stepped out again. The fog ribbons gathered around my shins with the cheap intimacy of a pet that knows you won't kick it. I aimed the beam into the sedan and found the back seat dented in the shape of a human body that wasn't there. The indentation rose as I watched, like a mattress forgetting someone. The rearview mirror trembled, not from wind, from a weight hanging off it. I reached in carefully and pinched the little chain lifting. A St. Christopher medal spun at the end, smeared with frost. The engraved back read, "Protect us." The U had been scratched deeper, then deeper still, until the letter became a gouge clean through the thin metal. I set it down on the dash. A registration slip fluttered out of the visor, though I hadn't touched it. I slid it free. The name field was blank. The signature field wasn't. My name, clean and practiced. My mouth filled with iron. I took a step back and my heel found warm gravel again, pulsing twice. The horn in the distance frayed into threads, and those threads wove into the hum under the tires, and that hum braided into the static in the radio. The world wasn't making sounds, it was mixing them. "Central," I said. "I need a second unit to verify." The reply came immediately, like it had been waiting under my tongue. "Second unit en route, ETA, 2 minutes ago." I stared at the mic, the way you look at a stray dog to see if it will bite or follow you home. Headlights bloomed again, this time nearer, smaller. A cruiser shape for sure. Relief tried to lift me and failed, like a plane throttling up on a short runway. The lights pulled onto the shoulder 50 yards behind, washed my back with that familiar blue-red heartbeat. I lifted a hand in greeting and started toward it. The horn hum faded as I put distance between me and the sedan. I was halfway there when I noticed the reflection in the other cruiser's windshield. A silhouette in the driver's seat. Same hat brim, same angle of the shoulders. He didn't move. I reached the passenger door and saw my own face in the glass. Not a reflection. A man sitting where I sit, wearing what I wear. Eyes fixed straight ahead at a point on the horizon I hadn't chosen yet. I froze. The horn in the distance bent down a note, then up, like a siren learning to sing. I rapped my knuckles on the window, gently at first, then sharp. The figure didn't flinch. I cupped my hands and looked in. The seat was filled, uniform crisp, badge bright. But the body wasn't there. The cloth held the shape perfectly, as if pressed around absence. The hat sat right where a head should be, brim steady, no skull beneath it. The radio on his shoulder hissed with my own breath. "Proceed to clear." The phrase didn't come from any mouth. It came from the spaces between sounds, that little gap after a click and before words begin. I backed away from the door and circled to the front bumper, keeping distance like you do with downed lines. The other cruiser's plate matched mine except for one number inverted, a 6 doubling as a 9, or the other way around, depending on how the night wanted you to read. I took one more step and the world blinked. Not lights, time. The bar lights hiccuped once and resumed. The horn picked up in the same wrong place in its loop. The fog ribbons straightened as if a wind had scolded them. The second cruiser's lights still washed me, but the seat was empty now. The uniform collapsed into the impression of a body that had never learned to breathe. My mic lifted in my hand without my permission. "Unit 12, clearing scene." The voice was mine, steady, professional. The hand holding the mic was mine, steady, professional. Somewhere a part of me watched those pieces work and wondered how long they could go on by themselves. I turned toward the sedan one last time. The windshield had fogged again. 5 palm prints appeared in a row at eye level, little crescents of nail at the tips. They were spaced as if a family had lined up to look out. Then the glass flexed inward like a held breath. I didn't look inside. I pivoted to the lanes, checked for traffic that never came, and stepped back into the cruiser. The engine greeted me like a dog that forgot it bit. I put the car in gear, rolled forward 10 feet, and the exit 41 sign marched past my window again as if it had been waiting in place for me to catch up. The odometer ticked a mile. The world did not. "Central," I said carefully. "Advise second unit cancel. I'll proceed to sweep the next marker." My voice answered right away from somewhere ahead of me. "Copy that, Unit 12." "You already did," The night pressed in just enough to make room for that sentence to sit beside me like a passenger. I pulled back onto the interstate and the white lines unspooled, tidy, obedient, as if nothing had happened. As if the highway were giving me one more chance to believe it. The lines ahead stretched into that same tidy rhythm, dotted white stripes gliding under my headlights, but each one looked older than the last. First, fresh paint, then faintly cracked, then worn down to ghost traces, then bare asphalt, then fresh again, like someone had stitched together different years of the same highway and told me to drive across all of them at once. I gripped the wheel harder. My reflection in the side mirror flickered, vanishing for a split second between blinks. The rear of the sedan still pulsed faint with hazard light echoes that weren't flashing anymore. I told myself to keep the car steady, told myself I was still in motion. But the truth pressed heavier with every tick of the odometer. I hadn't moved. The road had. I glanced back at the mirror one last time. The second cruiser was gone, its wash of red and blue stripped clean from the blacktop as though it had been painted over. In its place, only fog remained, rising neat and symmetrical, blocking the lanes behind me. It didn't scatter like normal fog. It waited, upright, almost polite. I flicked on the high beams, forcing my focus forward. The sign loomed again, bold green against the dark. Exit 41, Copper Ridge. This time I didn't slow down to study the dents or the bug constellations. I just let the car roll under it. My hands stayed on the wheel, but the steering didn't feel like mine. The wheel twitched with the rhythm of the engine, syncing itself, correcting itself, holding the center line even when I didn't. "Central," I said, voice breaking against the mic. "Be advised, possible false mile markers." The reply was my own, already logged, already official. "Copy that, false mile markers. Proceed to clear." I stared at the green glow of the next sign approaching. The number on it shimmered, distorted by heat or haze, but I already knew what it would say. Exit 41. I exhaled slow, held the wheel loose, and let the repetition close its teeth around me. The interstate ahead opened wide, a black ribbon lined with obedient reflectors, each one catching my headlights like an eye waiting to blink. I leaned forward, scanning for taillights, for any shape of life, but the road gave me nothing, only the hum of the cruiser's engine. Then a shape bloomed in the mirror, a rectangle of white light swelling fast. Headlamps, a truck barreling down my lane. Relief and dread collided in my chest, relief at another soul alive out here, dread because the horn blared too soon, too long, too steady. The sounds tunneled straight through me, low and immense, vibrating my teeth. I tapped the wheel, eased to the shoulder, hand out the window in a tired wave to signal lane change. The truck never shifted. It didn't slow. It didn't pass. The horn just poured like a river of steel. I clenched my jaw, bracing for the Doppler dip as it roared by. But the pitch never fell. The note stayed level, wrapped around me like a halo pressed too tight. The beams behind swelled, then held their distance, like the truck was forever arriving and never arriving. "Central, I've got a semi failing to pass." I forced authority into the words, even though my pulse scattered. The reply dissolved into fragments of my own voice screaming back at me. Not words, just shredded vowels. The cruiser shuddered. I looked down at the cup holder and watched coffee tremble in its lid, tiny concentric circles quivering like water hit by a bass note. The vibration climbed into my elbows, my ribs, the roots of my teeth. The pavement itself was humming, tuned to the truck's horn. I gripped the wheel tighter, but the leather twitched under my hands, steering itself a fraction left, then right, then back again. My car was no longer holding the road. The road was holding me. I flicked the window switch. Glass slid down, letting the horn inside full force. It was so constant, so endless that it blurred into music, like a choir frozen on one impossible note. I rolled the glass up. It dulled, but didn't vanish. The sound seeped through the doorframe, vibrating the keys on my belt, rattling the metal still resting on the dash. The headlights behind me should have burned hotter by now, closing the gap. Instead, they pulsed at the same impossible distance, like a mirage pinned to my rear view. I checked the odometer. It ticked up a mile, 2 miles. The truck never moved. The horn never faltered. I tried again. Central, confirmed traffic northbound. My own voice doubled, dispatch over it like a duet, broken, stuttering. Traffic northbound, bound. I snapped the radio off. Silence should have followed. It didn't. The horn still drilled through the night. The pavement still pulsed through the wheel. I turned the volume knob on the cruiser stereo just to prove sound could change, but the horn layered under whatever static hiss I forced onto the speakers. Move. The voice barely threaded the horn. I jerked my head, checked the empty seat, the back, the mirror. Nobody. Only me. And still, the whisper pressed again. Move. I threw the car into drive, accelerated. The truck lights behind me didn't shrink. I pushed 60, 70, 80. The horn never changed pitch. The vibration kept steady, a metronome trapped in asphalt. My eyes blurred. The white lines zipped faster, but the horizon refused to shift. The interstate had turned into a treadmill, feeding me the same mile over and over. The horn swelled louder, bleeding into the air vents, into the very bones of the cruiser. My chest hurt, lungs aching like I'd been screaming without noticing. I yanked the wheel and swerved onto the shoulder, tires spitting gravel. The vibration cut in half. The horn dipped lower, then lower still, until it was nothing but a breath against the window glass. I sat there, knuckles white on the wheel, waiting for headlights to surge past and vanish into the night. They didn't. The mirror showed nothing but fog. The sound faded to nothing. The highway pretended it had been empty all along. The radio clicked by itself, dead mic breathing into the cab. I didn't touch it. I didn't breathe. I stared at the asphalt ahead, and when the voice came through, it was my own. Calm, precise, official. Unit 12. No traffic observed. The cruiser's engine idled soft, almost apologetic. I killed the headlights, let the red dash lights be the only glow inside. The road out front blurred into a flat sheet of black that wanted me to forget it had ever moved. My hands shook when I reached for the dashcam toggle, more to anchor myself than to record. The playback monitor flickered. For a second, only static rippled across the small screen. Then the picture sharpened. My heart clenched. The feed didn't show the empty road. It showed me. Not sitting where I sat, but standing outside, leaning against the cruiser like a man who'd already given up the fight. I blinked, but the image didn't wait for me. The man in the footage, me, turned his head, looked left, then raised the mic. I froze, staring. The future me spoke. His mouth moved with the confidence of someone who'd already made peace with whatever this was. Unit 12. The road is closed. I looked down at the mic in my hand. I hadn't said it yet. My thumb hovered near the button, itching, nervous, desperate to press just to see if the words would tumble out. The figure on screen set the mic down, rubbed tired hands over his face. I watched my own fingers drag under my eyes like lead weights, skin folding into lines I didn't remember earning. My lungs hitched, following his rhythm. When he exhaled, I exhaled. When his shoulders dropped, mine obeyed. The feed had me on puppet strings. I slammed the toggle off. The screen went black. I told myself it was gone, but in the reflection of the blank monitor, I still saw my jaw moving slow, deliberate, independent of me. My lips parted without my permission. Say it. I flung the door open and staggered onto the shoulder. The cold smacked me hard enough to feel real again. My breath rose in sharp clouds. I pressed my palms against the hood until the heat seared through the gloves. Something tangible, something mechanical, something alive in a way I understood. The dash cam inside the car flicked on by itself. I saw the glow splash across the glass, the shape of me illuminated once more, head tilted in defeat. I couldn't hear it, but I knew exactly what that version of me was saying. Report filed. Incident closed. I circled the car, refusing to look inside. Every crunch of gravel came with a delayed echo, a second pair matching mine just a fraction off. I broke stride to test it. The echo adjusted, always lagging, always there. I gripped the mic again, this time yanking the cord from the dash so hard it snapped. The radio died in my hand, limp wire hanging like a severed vein. For a moment I let myself believe I'd killed it. Then the speaker cracked back alive, no cord attached. My voice, dispatch's voice, every voice I'd ever logged all at once. Unit 12, already filed. I backed up, pressed spine to the cool metal of the trunk. The monitor still glowed faint in the cabin, showing me minutes ahead, hands at rest, head bowed low like prayer. A prayer I hadn't given yet. A prayer I knew I'd be forced to repeat. The odometer ticked once more, though the car hadn't moved. A mile had passed, and I hadn't gone anywhere. The air inside the cruiser grew still again, as if the horn and static had only been an exercise to thin me out before the real weight dropped. I clicked the mic back into its cradle, though it wasn't connected anymore. The dash light still glowed steady red, watching. The channel opened on its own. A voice threaded through the hiss, slow, stretched, like tape dragging. At first it was dispatch, flat and procedural. Then it bent mid-sentence, climbing into a pitch I hadn't heard in years. My chest seized. Unit 12, confirm. Then softer, fragile. Michael? The cruiser swallowed the name whole, but I heard it. My name. Not my badge number, not my call sign. My name, spoken the way it used to sound when my mother called me in for dinner across the yard. I killed the radio. The voice stayed. Michael. My throat burned raw, like the syllables had been locked in me all these years and the night had stolen the key. I stared at the windshield, where fog smeared in gentle arcs. Palms again, but not frantic this time. Smaller, softer, like a mother steadying herself against the glass of a hospital nursery. My eyes blurred. I forced myself to speak, voice hard, flat. Firm command. Central. Repeat. Say again. The reply wasn't central. It was her, clear as a memory. Come home. The steering wheel felt slick under my hands. I didn't remember sweating. My palms slid anyway, like the cruiser itself wanted to ease me free, put me back into the arms of whatever voice had borrowed her tongue. I closed my eyes and there it was again. Not just sound, but the shape of her. The way her laugh lifted at the end. The sharp inhale before she scolded. The hush she used when the world pressed too hard on me as a boy. But the words didn't fit the mouth I remembered. They stretched wrong. "Michael, proceed to clear." I snapped my eyes open and gripped the wheel hard enough to ache. The windshield palms faded, smearing down into nothing. The dash clock still blinked 2:41, always 2:41. I whispered, "You're not her." The radio answered anyway, with the patience of a lullaby. "I am what you remember." I slammed the volume knob down to 0. The voice bled through at the same level, the same timbre. I yanked the entire unit from the mount, plastic snapping, wires tearing. The moment I cut it loose, the speakerless void whispered again, "Michael." The cabin shrank. The roof sagged lower. My head bent of its own accord, neck trembling like a child waiting for a hand that would never come. I jammed the shifter into drive, tires spitting gravel. The cruiser lurched forward and the voice grew fainter behind me. Not gone, just waiting. The highway stretched blank and endless again, signs waiting in the fog. But now every tick of the odometer came with her voice in the static, each mile another syllable. Michael, Michael, Michael. I knew then it wasn't dispatch, wasn't my mother, wasn't even the corridor speaking. It was the road itself, using the only sound I'd never be able to ignore. The radio went quiet, but the silence didn't last. A sharp pop filled the cabin, then another. Click, pause, click. I thought it was feedback, some stray burst from dispatch. Then I noticed the rhythm. The clicks matched my eyes. Every blink. Lid down, lid up. A click at the exact moment lashes met, like the radio was keeping time with me. I froze, refusing to blink. The cabin air burned. My eyes watered, lids begging to close. A click fired early, anticipating me. The radio blinked for me, deciding my timing. My lids slammed shut in surrender, and the sound tagged the moment like a stamp in a file. Click. Breath. Click. Blink. The sync grew tighter. My lungs heaved short and shallow. The mic hissed with each inhale, a little surge of static the exact shape of my breath. I clamped my mouth shut. The speaker still wheezed, imitating lungs not mine, filling the cruiser with air I hadn't taken. I ripped the unit out of its bracket and hurled it into the passenger seat. Plastic cracked. The voice coil rattled loose. Still, the dead shell breathed with me. I clawed at my face, desperate to remind myself it was mine, but the mirror caught me. My reflection blinked in perfect time with the clicks, lips parting in sync with the wheeze. A puppet, jerking strings pulled by invisible fingers. "Stop," I muttered. The mic repeated it a fraction earlier, layering the word under mine. "Stop." The overlap sounded like two men agreeing to the same sentence. I slammed my fist into the dash. The radio shuddered, fell silent. For a heartbeat, I believed it was done. But then another sound filled the void. Not clicks, not breath. Slow crunches of gravel looping around the cruiser, as if someone outside walked in circles timed to my chest. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. Heat radiated into my skin, grounding, but the sync didn't break. My pulse thudded against the column, and the wheel thudded back. My body had joined the rhythm, a machine inside a machine. I remembered academy training, one line of folklore they all joked about. If the road wants you, it makes you a mile marker. Some rookie's myth passed around like campfire smoke. I'd laughed back then. Now, the laughter echoed in my head in perfect sync with the clicks. My hand twitched, reaching for the shifter. I didn't mean to. The movement wasn't mine. My arm lifted in time with the rhythm, slotting the gear into drive with the mechanical certainty of a drill. My foot depressed the pedal. The car surged forward. I tried to fight it, wrench the wheel aside, stomp the brake. My limbs refused, locked to the beat of something larger. Each click was a command. Each breath was a report logged without me. The odometer ticked over again. A mile gained, a life lost. I gritted my teeth and forced a whisper through them. Not real. Not mine. The radio laughed. It wasn't sound, not really. Just clicks strung too fast, mimicking chuckles. My reflection in the mirror smiled a second before I did, mouth stretching into a grin I didn't choose. The white lines of the road blurred, not from speed but from vibration. Each one shivered in time with the clicks, blowing like a pulse under the pavement. The highway wasn't carrying me anymore. It was writing me, filing me like an entry in its endless log. Unit 12, the chorus of voices said, layered through every speaker. Report filed. Subject compliant. My voice joined theirs without permission. Report filed. The steering wheel straightened. My foot lifted from the pedal. The cruiser slowed on its own, gliding to the shoulder. The crunches outside stopped in sync. The click marked my last blink, then silence. I sat in the dead air, lungs refusing to move until the radio commanded them. Seconds passed. Then, my chest expanded, dragged open by a sound. Breathe. I did. The silence after the last click wasn't relief. It was an empty stage, waiting for its next act. I kept both hands on the wheel, fingers rigid, every joint aching from how hard I gripped. The radio stayed dead, but the absence of noise felt like a trap laid bare. The highway stretched, straight and endless. For a moment the road looked normal, reflective markers shining in dutiful rhythm, exit signs where they belonged. But my gut refused to accept it. When things lined up too perfectly, it meant the corridor wanted me comfortable, wanted me to look forward, not notice the seam unraveling just behind. That's when I saw them. Red and blue lights pulsed faint in the mist ahead. A cruiser sat angled on the shoulder, bar flashing a heartbeat too slow, then a heartbeat too fast. My hands went cold on the wheel. My own light bar strobed in rhythm, and together the two of us created a false siren that rippled across the fog. I slowed, shifted lanes, eyes narrowing. It was protocol to approach another officer on a stop, but nothing about this stretch of road had followed protocol. Still, I told myself maybe backup had been dispatched without my knowing. Maybe I wasn't alone. The cruiser ahead was identical to mine, same model, same paint scuffs. Even the left rear taillight bore the spiderweb crack I'd been meaning to log for weeks. My headlights washed across the trunk and the license plate gleamed back. Same numbers, same letters. No variation. My pulse hammered. Central, I whispered, though the radio cord dangled dead. My voice cracked anyway. Confirmed second unit on scene. Silence. Then a faint silence. Then a faint. I drifted onto the shoulder, tires crunching gravel. I stepped out, forcing my boots solid against the earth as though traction mattered against whatever this was. The air here was colder. Each breath I drew smoked white, even though my dashboard thermometer still read 60. The other cruiser idled steady. The figure inside sat perfectly still, hands at 10 and 2, face dim in the wash of light. A brim of a hat cut the silhouette, familiar as my own. I crept closer. My flashlight beam trembled across the windshield. The reflection of glass distorted the details, but I knew. I knew the angle of those shoulders, the curve of that jaw. It was me. I froze mid-step, fighting to swallow. Every instinct screamed to back away, to get in my car and never glance this way again. But procedure burned into me since Academy whispered different. Verify the approach. Confirm officer status. My voice felt brittle as glass. Firm command. Unit. I stopped myself. I didn't want to say my own call sign out loud, not to him. The figure didn't move, not even a twitch. The bar lights painted his cheeks red, then blue, then red again. It was like staring at a wax figure that breathed. I opened the passenger door. The hinges groaned loud against the silence. Inside, the seat sagged under invisible weight, uniform crisp, hat brim low. The fabric of the jacket puffed, collar standing stiff, badge glinting. Everything arranged as if a body wore it. Except no body was there. The smell hit next. Not sweat, not dust. Paper. Stale paper and ink, like the scent of old reports sealed too long in a file room. A page shifted on the seat, though no wind touched it. I leaned closer. The name tag shone faint in the flash beam. It bore my own. Perfect embroidery. Letters crisp. I staggered back, gagging on breath too shallow. Not me. Not me. The headlights from my cruiser flickered once. The reflection in the windshield doubled. Two of me now. One seated, one standing in shock. Both moved with the same slight shiver of breath. I dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across gravel, spinning shadows long and thin. My double didn't react. He didn't need to. His stillness was more alive than movement. I backed toward my own car, boots grinding sharp. The sound echoed twice, once behind me and once beside me, as if I'd grown additional legs. My hand fumbled for the door handle, but a voice caught me frozen. Proceed to clear. It came not from the figure, not from the radio, but from the pause between strobe cycles. A voice shaped by silence itself. My heart thudded, ragged and too fast. The figure's chest didn't rise, didn't fall. He was absence molded into my outline. The bar lights synced for one beat, perfect unison. My knees buckled. I slammed into the side of my car, breath knocked loose. The fog pressed closer, thick and hungry. The corridor had copied me now, filed me twice. And in that moment, watching myself idle behind glass, I realized the patrol wasn't about roads or signs or traffic. It was about duplication, replication. The highway collected versions of you the way the station collected reports. I didn't know if I was still the first draft. The figure in the cruiser never moved, not once. Not when the fog thickened, not when my flashlight beam trembled across his chest. Not even when I whispered his name under my breath. My knees ached from the tension of standing still, but the man, my double, remained perfectly locked in time. I forced myself closer, one boot crunch at a time. My pulse thudded with each step, loud enough to make me think the world could hear it. When I reached the driver door, I raised my hand, hovering just short of the glass. The reflection met me there, my face pale, strained, lips drawn tight in a line I recognized from every long night. I braced, then knocked. Hollow, sharp, real. The figure didn't respond. His head tilted the tiniest fraction, but it might have just been the way the lights bent. "Open the door," I muttered. My voice cracked halfway through. The words bounced back, repeating a moment later in perfect mimicry, though I hadn't pressed the radio. The door gave before I pulled the handle. It swung out heavy, air inside spilling over me with the scent of paper and dust. I shone the flashlight in, beam catching the empty jacket. The uniform sat full, shoulders round, chest broad, cap brim low, but it was air holding it together. No muscle, no bone. My throat tightened. Jesus. I reached out. My fingers brushed the sleeve. The fabric was crisp, ironed, impossibly fresh, as though it had never been worn. The moment I touched it, the figure collapsed. The shoulders folded in, the chest caved. The whole uniform sagged onto the seat in a heap, hat rolling across the floor mat to rest against the brake pedal. The sound was dry, brittle, not the slump of cloth but the crumble of pages. I stumbled back, hand clamped over my mouth. The cabin no longer smelled like engine oil and dust. It reeked of a file room sealed shut too long, ink baked into parchment. The badge gleamed in the middle of the heap, perfectly polished. My own number etched in sharp relief. I wanted to leave it. God, I wanted to slam the door and never touch it. But my hand betrayed me. It reached out, picked up the badge, thumb brushing over the engraved number. Cold, unnaturally cold. The digits seemed deeper than the metal, gouged down to a depth impossible for steel. A whisper threaded the silence. File completed. I spun, but no one stood on the shoulder. The fog swirled tighter, hugging the cruiser like walls. The odometer in my own car ticked again, though I hadn't moved. I looked back at the empty seat. The uniform had spread flat, each piece aligned neatly. Hat, jacket, shirt, pants. Like a body outline after a crime scene sweep. The flashlight beam quivered as it passed over the radio on the jacket's shoulder. The dead unit crackled to life. My own voice spoke from the hollow fabric. Unit 12. Status closed. The badge burned cold against my palm. My hand refused to drop it. My throat constricted, words pushing upward without permission. Unit 12. Status closed. The voice was mine, the tone not mine. I staggered backward, choking, trying to stop the script from spilling out. The headlights of my cruiser flickered once, twice, syncing with the words. My reflection in the windshield lifted its head, lips mouthing the phrase before I said it. The fabric uniform inside the other car shimmered, edges curling like paper too close to flame. Then it crumbled. The whole shape disintegrated into a fine dust, lifting in the draft, scattering into the fog. The badge clattered onto the seat. The whisper followed. One less. I bolted to my own cruiser, boots hammering gravel. My hands shook so badly I nearly missed the handle. I threw myself inside, slammed the door, locked it out of habit, though locks meant nothing here. My chest convulsed, breath breaking ragged through my teeth. The radio lit red. Unit 12, the voice said, no longer mine, no longer dispatch. Proceed to duplicate. The badge still sat heavy in my palm. No matter how hard I tried to throw it, my fingers clenched tighter. Cold bled into my veins, up my wrist, into my chest. My own pulse slowed, sinking to the static hiss. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see the reflection anymore. I didn't want to know how many versions of me the road had already written. But when I opened them again, the windshield didn't show my face at all. Just a blank outline of a head where features should be, already waiting for new words to be typed across it like a report. The cruiser rolled forward under its own weight, like the road had tilted just enough to make the wheels obey. My hands sat useless on the wheel. The badge lay on the seat beside me, glinting faint under the dashboard glow. The Interstate unfurled in front of me, white lines clicking beneath the tires with a precision too clean, too mechanical. Tick, tick, tick. Each one was less paint than scar, stitches holding the blacktop together like torn flesh sutured closed. My stomach churned with every mark, as though driving wasn't progress but crossing over an endless wound. I kept telling myself I'd find an exit, any exit, but the signs refused to change. Exit 41, Copper Ridge. Always Copper Ridge. The green boards swayed in the mist even when no wind touched them, letters trembling as if they hummed back at me. The odometer ticked again. Another mile added to the log. My hands twitched toward the mic, though I'd ripped it free. The sound still came, a phantom press I hadn't made. Unit 12, still in service. My chest hollowed at the phrase, still in service. Not alive, not lost, just logged. I rolled down the window, desperate for fresh air. Cold slapped me across the face, filling my lungs with a sharpness that felt like knives. For a moment, I almost welcomed it. The pain was proof the highway hadn't erased me yet, but the fog outside didn't drift. It leaned, bending with the motion of the car. The mist moved, not with the wind, but with me, like a cage of vapor steering me along. The longer I stared at the road, the less it looked like pavement. The black stretched, too flat, too polished, reflecting faint shapes I didn't want to recognize. Silhouettes walked beneath the surface, pacing step for step with my cruiser. Their heads tilted up at impossible angles, faces blurred, each one wearing a brimmed hat like mine. I jerked my gaze away, fixing it on the dash clock. 2:41, still, always. The cologne blinked slow, steady, mocking. I slapped the dashboard, but the light refused to change. My radio lit again, even disconnected. The voice that came wasn't dispatch, wasn't my mother, wasn't even the layered choir I'd been drowning in. It was me, older, tired, worn. Keep driving. I swallowed hard, throat sandpaper. For how long? The reply snapped sharp, leaving no gap for silence. Until the report ends. The road stretched. No end. No report. My breath fractured. My hands ached to swerve, to turn, to crash the car into the guardrail and end it. But the wheel fought me, tugging back with stubborn force. The patrol wasn't letting me choose. The patrol wasn't letting me stop. Every mile marker felt older than the last. Numbers weathered, peeled, then restored shiny again like they'd been replaced yesterday. The rhythm made me dizzy, like staring at a reel looping too fast. Somewhere beyond the fog, a siren bled faint. Not near, not far. A sound stretched thin, repeating in fragments, trying to become music. My heart stuttered with the pitch. The siren didn't belong to any car. It belonged to the road itself, wailing for a driver that never existed. I pressed my forehead against the wheel, praying silently that if I looked up again, something, anything, would change. But when my eyes lifted, the sign stood tall, glowing green. Exit 41, Copper Ridge. Again, always, forever. The badge rattled on the seat with each bump. A page fluttered out from nowhere, settling across my lap. It was a report form, blank at first, then lines inked themselves in. Unit 12, status logged. Location, Copper Ridge, MM327. Outcome, patrol continuing. I crumpled it in my fist, but the paper smoothed itself, perfect again. Words etched deeper this time as if engraved in bone. Endless. The windshield fogged once more. Hands pressed against the glass from the inside, dozens of them, sliding in rhythm with the white lines beneath me. They weren't frantic. They weren't begging. They were marching, palms flat, as if reminding me I was one of them now. I pressed the accelerator harder, but the car didn't speed up. The engine roared, but the white lines unspooled at the same steady pace. Like a treadmill, pretending to be a highway. I laughed once, sharp, broken. You win! You keep the road. I'll keep the wheel. My voice cracked into static before the last word ended. The patrol accepted my answer. The odometer ticked over again. Another mile filed. Another breath documented. Another man written into the endless log of Copper Ridge. The patrol car glided forward, smooth and obedient, like the road itself was carrying me rather than the engine. My hands rested on the wheel, but they might as well have belonged to someone else. The leather grip felt like a stranger's skin. Familiar, but borrowed. The fog leaned in thicker, swallowing the shoulder, the median, the stars above. The world shrank to two white lines sliding beneath me in the green glow ahead. Exit 41, Copper Ridge. Always there, always waiting. I slowed, half hoping the car would resist, fight to keep the loop alive. It didn't. The cruiser rolled down obediently, like it knew I needed the illusion of control. I pulled to the shoulder and cut the engine. Silence dropped like a blanket. Except it wasn't silence. The hum remained, low, patient, as though the road itself was still idling. For a long time I sat motionless, forehead against the steering wheel. My breath fogged the cabin glass. Each exhale smeared, each inhale left a fresh crescent. And then, faint, other crescents answered back from the inside of the windshield. Palms pressing outward, mimicking the rhythm of my lungs. I closed my eyes. Maybe, if I pretended hard enough, the fog would peel back, and I'd wake in a real dawn with traffic buzzing and the world remembering how to move. But the hum grew louder in my chest, sinking to my heartbeat until the two became indistinguishable. I opened the door. Cold air bled in, slicing along my skin. I stepped out. The crunch felt honest, grounding. But when I turned, the tracks I left on the shoulder doubled. 2 sets, then 3, walking half a beat behind. Shadows of steps layered like carbon copies. The other cruiser was gone. No twin, no double, just fog. But the smell of paper still lingered, dry and brittle, like old reports locked in metal drawers. A scrap lay against my boot. I bent to pick it up. A form already filled. My name at the top, my badge number. The last line read, "Status, closed." I tore it in half, in quarters, in shreds. The wind didn't carry the pieces. They hovered in the fog, drifted, then fused back together, whole again, slipping into my palm as though I'd never touched them. I stumbled back into the cruiser, slamming the door. The radio lit red instantly, though no wires remained. My voice, older, frayed at the edges, spilled from the speaker. Unit 12. Conclude patrol. I shook my head, throat raw. I won't. The reply was me again, but younger, steadier. A rookie voice that still believed the world made sense. You already did. The dashcam clicked on by itself. The feed showed me sitting right where I was, but slumped deeper, head bowed lower, lips moving to file the report. My reflection in the screen looked more like a silhouette typed across a form than a man. Say it. I fought to keep my lips pressed shut, jaw trembling, blood rushing hot in my ears. But the patrol wasn't asking anymore. It was waiting, confident, patient. The red record light blinked, steady as a metronome, keeping time for my surrender. I pressed my palms to my ears, shut my eyes. Memories came instead of silence. Academy nights, the first time I pulled a drunk from a ditch, the way my mother's voice had cracked when she told me to come home. All of it blurred into the same tone, the same demand. Report filed. The odometer ticked, another mile logged, another life gone. I opened my eyes and the windshield glowed faint with more palms, dozens now, pressing from the inside. Each one wore my hand's shape, my finger length, my scar along the knuckle. Versions of me layered on the glass, waiting to be let out. The radio spoke once more, final, absolute. Unit 12. Status closed. My lips parted. Status closed. The fog swallowed the sound. The engine roared to life on its own. The wheel straightened under invisible hands. The patrol pulled back onto the interstate, white lines unspooling, exit signs trembling green in the dark. The badge rattled in the cup holder, catching stray flashes of light. The paper report lay across the seat again, words carved deeper than ink, engraved into permanence. The corridor didn't care if I believed. It didn't need me to resist. It only needed me to drive. And so I did.